Yo, what it do, YouTube? This is your brother Jay International tapping back in once again. And for today's subject, I want to talk about what men and women want differently in terms of sexual activity. Now, I know I did another video about the difference between men and women sexuality, where I just explained the difference basically in how we view or how we feel about sex. But now, in this one, I want to talk about the differences in terms of what we want sexually. Now, on this YouTube channel, man, I have a type of mind where, I have a lot of thoughts. I think about things, and you may see on this channel that I'm talking about different things. I'm whether I'm talking about wealth, whether I'm talking about racism, whether I'm talking about current events. I'm always thinking and talking about different things because I'm not a one-trick pony. My mind just doesn't focus on one subject. And you do have channels that do just focus on one subject, and they devote different, they may have multiple channels where they basically focus on one thing. I'm the type of individual that I would talk about different things, and I should separate them, but this is what I do. So let's get back. I know I went on a rant, but let's get back to what the subject is. As you see, the FedEx vehicle behind me wants to make a cameo for some reason. But anyway, the difference is this, and I'm giving promo to FedEx, free promo to FedEx. For some reason, I don't know why the guy wants to pull up right behind me, on the side of me. I don't understand that, but it is what it is. So the difference between men and women in terms of sexuality. This is the difference. The difference is this. In terms of sexuality with men and women, is that with men, well, this in terms of sexual preference. With men, right? We want, when we talking about sex, and I'm not talking about relationships. I'm not talking about what we want as far as a long-term committed relationship or a long-term committed partner. I'm talking about when it comes to sexuality in modern times. What men want when we look for, and I'm talking about a heterosexual sexuality. So this is heterosexual sexuality because I am a heterosexual male. What we want is, we don't want a woman, we tend not to want, if it's just on a sexual level, it's just purely sex, we tend to want women that don't have a lot of experience, that don't have a lot of sexual mouths. Now, when I say experience, how does experience come in terms with women, right? Experience comes with a woman who may have a high body count. With a woman who may have a high body count, right? And usually that high body count comes from a woman who has been sexually active for a number of years, right? And why do we not want that? Is because what happens is that woman may, what happens with that woman is that she usually comes across men that are a man that does something to her sexually, right? She will usually come across men that do something to her body sexually. They leave a sexual imprint on her body, you know, or she may come across a man or men who turned her out sexually. So what happens is that when you come across this woman, if you don't meet up to that sexual ideal that she already has, you know, the sex for her, it won't do it. You won't do it for her sexually, because she either has a threshold that she has experienced sexually, or she has an individual that has turned her out sexually, and you may not know about it. If you're her new sexual partner, you may not know about that. And so what will occur is that if you don't meet up to that, that threshold, then she is going to become bored by you. She is not going to be, the sex for her with you is not going to be great, because you don't meet up to that sexual threshold, right? So with women, right, what they want sexually is usually a man that is experienced. And so what happens is, how do we men get that experience? How do men get that experience? We get that experience through practice. With everything, experience comes through practice. It comes through repetition. It comes through putting in that work. That's how men get that experience. And so what usually women like that, who have sexual mileage, who have a high body count, they usually would be better or do better with men that have experience. And with women that don't have a high sexual, body count, or have a very low body count, they still want men that have experience, that can teach them new things, that can teach them, take them sexually to another level, right? Now, what do men want in terms of sexuality? Or when we're talking about just sex and, having a sexual partner, what do we want? Well, what we want in terms of sex and sexual partners, free promotion for FedEx. What we want in terms of sex and sexual partners is that what we want is an individual that is not as experienced. Like we don't want a woman that has a lot of mouths on her. You know what I'm saying? Because a woman with a lot of mouths, as I said, as I alluded to, they're usually very hard to please sexually, because they already having a sexual imprint on them. And in addition to that, a woman that has a lot of mouths has had a lot of pounding from different sizes of phalluses. She's had a lot of poundings on that vaginal orifices. So the vaginal orifice is a muscle. With the more pounding that it happens to it, the more it gets stretched out, because it's a muscle, right? And if it's constantly being pounded, if it's not taking any breaks, then it's going to stay stretched out. And if she has children, then it's even more stretched out, right? So what we want legally, in legal age, everything is legal. Every state has a different legal age of consent, but we're just talking about sexually. As I said, we're not talking about relationship. We're not talking about long-term commitment. We're talking about sexually, right? What we want sexually. That's what we're talking about, okay? And so usually what men want in terms of a sexual partner from a female is, one, that is one of legal age, but two, has less sexual experience, because that means that her vaginal orifices is usually more tighter, right? Has not had a lot of sexual pounding, a lot of sexual, a lot of stimulation, so it's more tight, and she's less experienced, so that means that she doesn't have that, she basically does not have that, the case where she has someone that maybe have imprinted her sexually, that you have to live up to. You have to live up to that sexual ghost that imprinted her. She doesn't have that. So you will be the one that is sexually imprinted her. You will be the one that is teaching her new things sexually. And as I said, usually 9 times out of the 10, if she does not have a lot of sexual partners, the vajayjay, the yoni, is tighter. So the feel of it, it's a tighter experience, right? And usually this comes with women who are younger, as I said, but legally. We're not going, this is all legally, but usually this comes with women that are younger and are of the legal age of consent. I have to reiterate that. And yeah, that's usually where it comes from, right? Which is why, in terms of men, what we want sexually is usually women that are younger than us, because we will equate that with less mileage, less sexual mileage, less bodies, less sexual impressions, right? So that's usually what men want. We usually want women that we can give that sexual experience to. Teach that woman new things that she hasn't experienced before. And what women want is men that are usually more experienced, that will teach them things. Or if it's a woman that already has a lot of experience, a man that knows what he's doing sexually, which will usually come from men that are older in age and have more sexual experience. This is why you would see women, when they usually choose a sexual partner, he's usually older than them, because they want that man that knows what he's doing sexually, which comes from experience. You don't get that by watching pornographic films. I don't care how many pornographic films that you watch. It's just like boxing. I like boxing, right? You can watch all the boxing videos that you want. You can watch all the boxing, matches and the greats, you know what I'm saying? But until you get in that ring and you start sparring, you lace up them gloves and you put on that headgear, you ain't gonna know what it's like. You got to get in there and you got to fight. You got to put in that work, right? The same thing when it comes to sex. You got to put that work in to know, to get your groove, to get your rhythm, to know what you're doing. And women know that. That's why they prefer men that know what they're doing, which is usually why they seek older men, because they assume that they equate older men with knowing what they're doing sexually. And as I said, this is in terms of sex. It's not in terms of long-term relationship. That's a whole different subject matter that I will get into later. So with that being said, this is your brother Jay International, tapping back in once again. I know I had a lot of distractions going on in the background, and I'm a brother that always keep his head on the swivel. So when I see movement behind me and stuff, I'm looking, I'm paying attention. But there's a lot going on in this environment. But with that being said, it's your brother Jay International, tapping back in once again. Make sure you hit that like button, make sure you hit that subscribe button, and make sure you share. I'll holler at you later. Peace.